Hello everyone, Tech Gamer here. Today I'd like to show you one of my favorite games called Kerbal Space Program. In this game, you basically can fly space missions, create rockets, and all kinds of fun stuff. I'd like to show you a pre-built scenario where we can land on the moon. So as you can see, we have started the scenario. This ship we have here mimics an Apollo-style spacecraft, complete with a command module on the left and a lunar excursion module. We're going to use the LEM on the left side now to land on the moon. So as you can see, you're just checking all the parts here. There's our engine. So right now there is no one inside of the module. So first thing we need to check is our relative altitude. We are about 32,000 meters off the surface of the moon in a circular orbit. We can see the apophysis on the right, about 35,000 meters, and the parapus on the left at about 32,000 meters. So there's basically your high and your low points. Your highest point is the apophysis, and the lowest point is the parapus. So not too worried about that for the purposes of this video. So the first thing we basically need to do is we need to transfer a pilot to the LEM. The other two will remain in orbit. So I'm going to transfer my first Kerbal astronaut into the LEM. He's now moved into the lander. So the next thing we need to do is disconnect the docking clamp holding the two ships together. So we're going to select undock here, and you will see that the two ships will separate apart. As you can see, we are now on our own. So what we first need to do is slowly turn the ship around. Now there are a number of ways you can do this. I prefer just the easiest method of turning the ship around and targeting the circle with the X inside on our gimbal down below. This is the pointing at the low point, which in turn will slow down our ship when we ramp up the engine, and in turn decrease our forward velocity and allow us to leave orbit and head down towards the moon. So as you can see, it looks like we are moving away from the command module, which we are indeed doing, because in reality we're only slowing down. So we're just going to keep burning our engine for a little bit. As you can see on the bottom left, we have our liquid fuel. They give you a substantial amount for this scenario because you need some for the return to orbit. So we're just going to slow down our speed here, and as you can see, the teal lines are our points. Anything to the left is where we did before. To the right is where we're going to go. So we're going to reference a couple of things here to determine our landing site. I'm probably going to target the northwest turn crater. Now again, you can see it's that darkish circle right there where the teal line is ending. So I'm going to adjust my orbital alignment to give me a better landing site, because we need to watch obviously for things such as craters, rocks, and stuff like that when we're going to land. So as you can see, I now have positioned myself in the direction I wish to go, and we need to realign ourselves so that our feet are basically pointing in the direction of what will be the ground. So as you can see, this little yellow item here on the gimbal is our heading, and we want to keep our alignment within that area. We'll call that, for purposes of this video, the landing target. Now that target will move as our altitude lowers, because it will force us to realign the way our ship is pointed, so that we obviously keep our feet pointed towards the ground. So right now our velocity is just carrying us towards our landing site, and you can see it up ahead. It is that kind of raised up big crater that we're heading towards. Now, a trick to landing on the moon, MUN in this game, is to find an area that is soft and not full of craters and hills and valleys, because you can tip over or break your landing legs, which then you basically will destroy your ship. So I'm targeting the outer rim of this northwest crater here, because they're the outer rim of craters, if you look at them on the maps, typically are devoid of other miniature craters and rocks, debris, and it's typically flat-ish in this game, at least, and on the moon. So now we're just going to drift a little bit, and we want to conserve our liquid fuel, and we have to obviously keep an eye on our things, such as the status of our lander and our altitude and our speed, a relative velocity. Right now, the relative velocity is still set for orbit. That will change automatically as I get lower to the ground. But for now, we'll just leave it as it is. So we're just going to keep continuing to float through space as our altitude drops. Obviously, you can see our speed. We're still going fairly quickly. We're traveling about 382 meters per second. So we're just going to continue to keep letting this go for a little bit. And soon we'll begin our slowdown burn. Obviously, again, we want to make these burns as efficient as possible. There we can see the sun and Kerbal. Kerbal is our home planet in this game. So we're going to do a burn here. As you can see, I have ignited the engine again, and you can see our relative angle of landing is starting to become smaller track. So we're just going to keep burning for a little bit and throttle it down so that we're still keeping our relative speed up. You can use your engine to, when you burn the engine, it will, depending on which way you're pointed, in my case, I'm pointed the opposite way of which I'm moving. So when I burn, my engine will slow me down and in turn increase my level of descent, because we want to target a specific area to land in. Now, you do that for a couple of reasons. One, the area that we want to explore, for example, is a primary reason for targeting a landing site. Two is the relative ease of getting back into space, because obviously, again, we need to get back into space and dock with the command module in order to get home. Now, we're not going to see that in this video, but that will be another video. So we're going to do another burn here to slow ourselves down a little bit. Again, I need to keep an eye on my velocity. So as you can see, the blue line shrinks as it gets, and will adjust our landing site depending on how much of a burn I do. I'm trying to target the bottom left corner of this northwestern crater. So as you can see, it's getting harder to tell where that crater actually is, because it's a massive crater. So we're just going to keep angling our trajectory downward as the landing target on the gimbal moves as well, depending on our altitude. As you will see, by the time we land, the landing altitude target will basically be right at the highest point, because we'll be basically standing straight upright, which is what we want, how we want to land. So we're just going to keep slow burning to slow ourselves down a little bit here, and you can control your speed with keeping the throttle at a minimal level, and you won't get any faster, you won't get any slower. It's just a matter of playing with that throttle. So as you can see here, we've got our targeted landing site on the northwest crater, about a little ways in from the rim. It looks like a pretty flat spot there with devoid of craters, so which should make for a nice soft landing. Again, the worst that can happen is you can crash, your ship can tip over and not be destroyed, and then your Kerbal astronaut is trapped on the moon, and then you have to launch a rescue mission to come and get him. So by pressing the letter C, we can go look inside the spacecraft for a first-person point of view, and we can use that to help orient ourselves to keep the ground on the bottom and space on the top. Again, in space, besides the fact that no one can hear you scream, direction and altitude and angle and velocity is all relative to depending on where you are and what you're doing. So there not necessarily is an up, down, left, or right, because it's all dependent on your point of reference. In our case, the point of reference is the moon surface. So as you can see, the gimbal has switched to our surface speed, and we are about 10,000 meters or 30,000 feet-ish away from the ground. So we're just going to continue to angle downwards so that our engine faces the ground. Now this is the most important part of the mission, because we need to make sure that our relative speed doesn't get too high. I like to keep it around 100 meters per second and watch my velocity, because I don't want to go too quickly and then have to slow down too fast and risk crashing into the ground. So as you can see, the best way to do this is to continue to pan around and get an angle of where you're at in the ground and look for a suitable landing site. Now, say for example, you're at 10,000 meters or 30,000 feet and you see that your landing site doesn't look good. Like if you look behind my ship there, you'll see that rocky area where there's a bunch of hills. That would not be a good landing site, because there's no way we could extrapolate exactly the spot we'd land in. So you may end up landing on that hill, and then you land, and then you tumble down and destroy your ship. So we're going to try and land for this nice flat area right behind us here, below us. And it looks like a pretty good landing spot. So we're just going to keep angling down. If you need to adjust your landing site, you can do that by burning and pointing your ship opposite way of which way you actually want to go. But that's a risky maneuver at this point, because again of our relative altitude being about 18,000 feet, and you don't want to burn too much fuel. You need at least about half your fuel to get back into space and connect with the command ship. Obviously that all has to be done at a predefined time when the ship is going to be in the area that you need to reach it. So obviously you want to launch before the ship is in your area. So we're going to continue dropping to the ground. We're at about 145 meters per second. We're at about 4,000 or about 12,000 meters at this point, 12,000 feet. So we're going to do a burn here to slow our speed down considerably. Now you'll see you'll slow down fairly quickly, especially as you get closer to the ground. So, but again, you want to be conservative about your speed, because if you drop too low, too fast, you won't be able to recover enough to have a soft landing. So we're just going to continue our burn here and full throttle, basically, to slow us to the point that we want. I like to get down to about, 20 meters per second, maybe. So as you can see, we're continuing our burn. You'll know when you're getting super close to the ground because your shadow will appear and you'll start to kick up moon dust, which is something to watch for. So as you can see, my surface speed is about now 15 meters per second in relative to the ground. So we're going to continue descending downward and keep our speed, keeping our throttle about, 18%, 20%. That keeps us from gaining speed and losing speed. And you kind of just feather it as you're landing here. As you can see, I'm okay on fuel for the most part. So if you're going to do an abort, you need to do it before you get to the point that you can't make it back. They call that like bingo fuel. So we're going to, in this case, just keep going. Now, this area is a little bit of a decline in terms of the land, but should be okay. Doesn't look that steep. So we're just going to continue letting the ship drop. I've dropped my my engine down to nothing for a moment. As you can see, we will pick up speed. So we need to, again, just bring the throttle back up to compensate for how fast we're falling. As you can see on the right, my shadow has appeared, which means I'm getting close to the ground. So we're about 1,800 meters, or 4,800 feet, like 5,000 feet. So we're just going to angle ourselves in relative to the ground. Now, at this point, you kind of want to focus on the ground as your point of reference in lieu of that icon on the gimbal there, because it doesn't really help you. You'll see it'll fly away There it goes. So we're just going to feather ourselves down to the ground again, and we're gonna kick up some moon dust here in a minute, and for a nice soft touchdown on the moon. We're just about down, and we have landed. So as you can see, we had a little bit of a bounce there, but nothing out of the ordinary, and welcome to the moon. So the next thing to do is to shut down the engine, because we don't want to accidentally hit the throttle and send us back up off the ground. So as you can see, we're in a nice, relatively good position. We're going to extend the ladder. As you can see, the ladder comes out of the landing can and extends down towards the ground. And now we'll send our astronaut here outside of the ship, have him come down the steps, and be the first Kerbal to ever land on the moon. So as you can see, the ladder doesn't quite reach the ground. You basically just press space, and he falls flat on his back, which is not a good look for the space agency, given that you just landed on the moon, but it is what it is. So there are ways, obviously, you can use your retro thrusters and your suit to stop that. I just like to fall for the look. So now we'll go head out here, and we will show you how high we can jump. Whee! And we're going to go ahead here and plant a flag. And we can put an inscription on the plaque that will be left here on the moon. Now, the moon flag will be a target on your maps for future. So moon landing site 1. And we'll name up the plaque text. We'll mimic some of the Apollo 11 wording. So here we have it. We have landed on the moon. We've placed a flag and extending our reach out into the solar system. I like this game. It's a very challenging game because of its realism. Getting to the other planets is very difficult, but so much fun. Especially trying to get back is a lot of fun as well. So thank you everyone for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and there will be more coming soon. Thank you everyone.